Hi, my name is Mark Nejmeh from Newsweed.com. I'm an investor in BNGO Bionanogenomics that has the optical genome mapping, which seems very interesting. Um, I just want to kind of give you a rundown of how I think when I'm investing or when I'm going to sell, uh, because I think that we all need to share our thoughts, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. But yesterday, the CEO of BNGO
Cohen Investing Hands and Ladenburg Thalmann. Thank
was
you for joining us.
at a
Next up, we
conference,
have
and he was
Eric
speaking. The way
Holmlin,
I operate
who is
is
President,
I
CEO, and Director
take
at
a very serious look
Bionanogenomics.
at
Eric, thank you very
the
much for
people who I
joining us,
invest
and I'm
in.
going to
And
give you the floor. Thank you.
to me,
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dusty.
everything about a
Appreciate the
person,
opportunity to
how they act
participate and
when they're
talk
on the
about
spotlight,
Bionano with you
means
today.
something.
Of course, we're going to be talking about some
You
forward-looking
can see Eric
statements, and so I
in the
would
upper
remind
right-hand
everybody
corner
that
speaking,
we have a number of filings
and you
available on
can
our website and on the SEC website, and those
see that he's a
should be
upfront guy. But let me just
I want to
talk
kick off
about
by
the things
putting
that I see
Bionano into the
when I'm looking
context
at
of
a video.
really the genomics landscape and taking a pretty broad view. If we think about the first 20 years of genomics, it's really been defined by two technologies, the microarray and next generation sequencing. And I'm being kind of generous to the microarray. It's really been about next generation sequencing.
First of all, the comment on his dress.
And it's just been incredibly transformative.
You can tell that this
these
man is
technologies
a
have
very hard
enabled
worker.
the creation of industries
He
that have spawned off
has
companies.
a dress shirt
And if you
on,
think about
black
now
shirt. He's just
what's happening with sequencing.
he's not dressed for the
compared
part
to
because he's working so
when
hard.
those two decades began.
Notice
20
right here,
years
I want
ago.
to stop you right here. He had his hands moving around.
Really, the genomics landscape.
Then he put them across
taking a
his
pretty broad
belly.
view, if we think about the first 20 years of genomics, it's really been defined by two
Pretty much has his
technologies,
hands
the
across his
microarray and
lap.
next generation sequencing. And I'm being kind of generous to the microarray. It's really been about next
Talking to the
generation
camera.
sequencing. And it's just been incredibly transformative because these technologies have enabled the creation of industries that have spawned off companies. And if we think about
Got
now
some emotion.
what's happening
Then he
with
puts his hands
sequencing
behind his back.
compared to when
This is very
those two
important.
decades began, say 20 years ago, we rightly should be just amazed.
It seems like he doesn't want to show his hands.
Talk about them for a second. Sequencing every single T-cell receptor to build an incredible data set that drives all sorts of medicines, diagnostics, incredible capabilities enabled by that technology. And there are many others. The whole molecular diagnostics revolution driven by genomic health based on microarrays, PCR, and other methods. But when we look at this pace of innovation from a technology perspective, it's clearly leveling off for next generation sequencing. Illumina is seeking to become a content company through its acquisition of Grail. The innovation, the next wave of big biology is going to come from somewhere else. And one of the areas that we believe it's going to come from is the analysis of
Hands
genome
together.
structure. And that requires
People together.
a completely new paradigm. And so we've been building our company to drive that shift. And so we focus on something called optical genome mapping. And we're approaching this market and this opportunity with the vision of bringing a
Trust.
new data type
It's touching his heart.
and a new platform to market.
What makes life?
And
the heart.
the technique that we have developed is optical genome mapping, and it focuses on identifying
Hands behind the
genome
back
structure
again.
and genome structural variation. So
What
we
is he
think about
hiding?
Sequence changing
What am I
and
hiding?
having that drive certain health and biological effects. The structure of the genome can change in the same way, and we'll talk about that in another couple of slides. Now, when we look at the opportunity for optical genome mapping behind a new platform, it's in a couple of areas. So immediately we have the opportunity to transform the genomic analysis landscape when it comes to genetic diseases and cancer. There are a number of cytogenetic tools that are used today, and we can really come in and provide a very efficient workflow. But when we also think about the sequencing that's going on in the space, a lot of it, 60, 70% of sequencing is for some research application to ask some basic question about biology and medicine. And so if you're asking questions, you're going to want to have all of the tools available to you in your repertoire. And so we believe optical genome mapping is one such tool. And beyond these near-term markets, there's a lot of what we call white space, all sorts of new opportunities, new capabilities, new applications of genome structural analysis that can be driven by
To me, his
research,
hands
like
together
new
in this
medicines,
position.
new diagnostic
I mean, like,
biomarker signatures.
come on, man. I'm praying that you
Population
trust me on
analysis,
this.
newborn screening. This is some of the stuff that we believe is available to optical genome mapping as a field. Now, this platform, the Sapphire system, delivers something called OGM.
Here's the Regent kits,
And optical genome mapping
which I
is
think
an
are the
approach
critical
that has been developed
earnings
to look
area
not
of
at DNA sequence or
BNGO.
genome sequence, but sequence patterns. And importantly, these sequence patterns unfold over an incredibly long distance in the genome, and that's why they reveal structure. The difference is, instead of looking at a single word off the page, we're able to look at full sentences. And so when a sentence has been rearranged in a paragraph, that's very obvious, but if a word has been misspelled, sometimes you'll read right past that. And so picking up the sequence requires this long view, and long read sequencing can only see, about 10,000 base pairs. This says 1,000 base pairs, but it's really about 10,000 base pairs, whereas we're looking over hundreds of thousands of base pairs. Furthermore, optical genome mapping is fast and inexpensive to operate. And it's essential for detecting really all classes of structural variation. And so it's a very powerful capability that also reveals the presence of variants in complex mixtures. So incredibly useful as a new tool in genome research, and certainly in areas of genome analysis in genetic diseases and cancer. Now, this term that I've been using, structural...
Just pay attention to Destiny Hance down below, how she'll shake her head agreeing with him as well. I think it's very important to also pay attention to the way the panel is reacting to his comments.
Variation. It may sound new to a lot of people, and investors in particular. It's actually a sequencing term. They talk a lot about single nucleotide variants, but they know in the sequencing world that large chunks of the genome can move around, and those they refer to as structural variation. Well, guess what? The whole foundation of management of cancer, hematologic malignancies, solid tumors, and genetic diseases is all based on structural variation.
Again, his hands are behind his back.
Incredibly
What is he hiding?
Important variants that occur in patients,
His
in
hands come out
subjects
when
that
he
are
explains
involved in
what they
different
have.
research studies.
But when
And
he
in fact,
starts
these
to talk
medical
about things
guidelines,
that
and so we've listed the
he
logos
doesn't want
of
to
several
show, or maybe is
important
coming, his hands are behind the back.
standard-setting groups that drive the practice of
Maybe his back
medicine in these
hurts.
indications, and they all recommend the analysis of genome structure as part of first-line patient management. So anytime a patient is undergoing evaluation for genetic disease or cancer, they're going to have their genome structure analyzed. And in fact, genome structural variation is the basis of many targets of disease, and especially prevalent in rare diseases. And I've listed a
Now
few
he talks
companies
about the
here
facts,
that
his hands
have been
come forward.
formed and making good progress in developing applications to address forms of muscular dystrophy, such as FSHD. And the point is that this area of genome structure is incredibly important, but there's limited tools available to address them. Now, I mentioned some of these market opportunities. We believe that the opportunity right at our doorstep ranges from $2.6 to $3.8 billion. And that's based on these two segments here. One is converting existing cytogenetic methods for analysis of genetic and heme malignancies into an optical genome mapping workflow. The reason you would do that is it's much simpler and faster and less expensive. And there's about 4 million
Touching his
patients
fingers, you got the
worldwide who
points.
are analyzed for these indications on an annual
Points.
basis. And there's also some research opportunities there. So that's a significant opportunity for us.
We
And
know
then
that.
I also mentioned this idea of complementing genome sequencing. So there are about 6,000 sequencers installed worldwide that are used in different forms of research discovery. So seeking to
Tie them
identify
together,
different targets,
tie the
and different,
sequencing machines
biomarker
together.
signatures. And the idea is that if you're on a search and you're using sequencing, you would want to complement that.
Tie
with
them together.
The optical genome mapping
The
technology,
sequencers
because
and
it's going to
optical
reveal
genome
more
mapping.
information about the samples that
It's pretty
you're
much giving the
analyzing.
idea
So
that,
that's
hey, we should have
another
6,000 OGMs
element
out
of
there.
our near-term market opportunity.
Sapphire
Now we
machines.
see all sorts of expansion of the total available market for us. Solid tumor analysis is a big area. All forms of screening, newborn screening, a lot of fertility screening, parents considering pregnancy. Liquid biopsy, we know a lot about the liquid biopsy that's going on in the world today. Every positive test is going to need a reflex diagnostic test, and those are likely to be structural variations. And so our optical genome mapping approach is going to be very good at it. And same thing in population genetics. If you're searching through populations to discover what makes them unique, what might be different indications of disease susceptibility, you're going to want to do a genome structure analysis. So we
Disease susceptibility, population evaluation. It's very important.
believe that the near-term market is in the few $1 billion range, but the broader market is even significantly bigger. Now, I've been talking to you a lot about structural variations, and hopefully some of you are wondering, what are these structural variations and why haven't I heard about them before? And I think the answer to that question is in this slide. On the one hand, the traditional methods that are used to detect them are pretty antiquated. They've been around for a long time, and they're very slow and cumbersome to implement on a really big
What does
scale.
that mean?
And so this
To you?
molecular revolution that we've seen
Behind your
driven
hand
by
like that.
sequencing
Like, come
just
on,
hasn't
man.
caught up with this space because
The old stuff.
the methods for genome structure analysis are not sequencing based. On the other hand, you haven't heard about them from the sequencing companies because sequencers don't really reliably detect structural variations. And so we have an opportunity that's perhaps missed by a lot of the companies that are going after genome variation today, because the real opportunity is in consolidating the multiple methods that exist within traditional cytogenetics, molecular and anatomic pathology into a single workflow based on optical genome mapping. And so that's really what we're focused on. Everybody wants to know, how does optical genome mapping with the Sapphire system measure up against the sequencing solutions that are out there? And so we put together this chart. And I want to emphasize that the table that we put together is based on published data where available, and the attributes that we're comparing are really important attributes because those will be the attributes that a lab will evaluate when selecting a technology for structural variation analysis, especially in cancer and genetic diseases. So we've already talked about this idea of read length. The length over which you have a contiguous amount of information determines your ability to see structure. Ours is on average about 300,000 base pairs. So you can see how substantially longer that is than any sequencing solution that's available on the market. That's why optical genome mapping works. When we look at the performance, you can see hands down, it's the best for looking at large structural variations. A lot of the published data is out there on 5,000 base pairs and bigger, and so that's how we're making this comparison. You can see one of the best long-read sequencing solutions available is PacBio's, and they do a pretty good job, but they only detect about 72% of the insertions and deletions that our system picks up. So we're really in a class of our own in terms of performance. We're able to pick up what we call low cell fraction variants. So when the pathogenic cell type is present in relatively low abundance, our Sapphire system picks them up. And then we have a throughput and cost that's comparable to next generation sequencing. And so that's why this platform is increasingly becoming the platform of choice.
Just notice that Destiny is kind of smirking at this point, not agreeing with exactly what Eric said.
For labs that are doing genome structure analysis. And here's a slide. It's a busy slide. I recognize that. But on the left-hand side, we're showcasing, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big studies that have been completed. 4 out of the 5 have been published. These, some of these European studies have come out recently in the last couple of weeks. And
please note the reaction of Destiny Hance as she looks over this list very specifically, almost wanting to take a note of it. I think that's very important.
The American Journal of Human Genetics, and they show that this platform is comparable and concordant with existing methods in the industry, and so it's reasonable to imagine transferring your workflow over. They also illustrate, like, for example,
he's more comfortable, he's more open.
San Francisco and
look,
Oakland
this is what's happening.
They show that while traditional methods miss about 50% of diagnoses, the optical genome mapping picks up 18% of the missed diagnoses that are out there.
That's a
So
fact.
it's not only as good as the standard of care, but it's better. And what we see on the right-hand side is a number of labs that have been adopting optical genome mapping for different applications
He touched
genome analysis
his hair,
in these different
and
markets.
Destiny
And so
touched
we've
her
seen
hair.
a lot
Let's
of
go back.
progress, and this is based on how we go to genome mapping picks up 18% of the missed diagnoses that are out there. And so it's not only as good as the standard of care, but it's better. And what we see on the right-hand side is a number of labs that have been adopting optical genome mapping for different applications in genome analysis in these different markets. And so we've seen a lot of progress, and this is based on how we go to market. We have developed a strategy that makes sure that anybody who's interested in working with optical genome mapping will get access to it. So we provide services, and that's a way of really seeding the market with data about the capabilities so that there will be an enormous number of studies ongoing, papers published, and awareness about the capabilities. We have a pretty traditional life sciences instrumentation model where you can rent our platform called the Sapphire system by committing to a reagent annuity, or you can purchase the platform outright. And we also offer diagnostic services. So we have a CLIA business. Our CLIA business is actually based on the traditional methods, and we're using that business to as really as a platform through which we prove out new and novel tests that we'll be developing based on our Sapphire system and get them reimbursed by insurance companies. And our vision is that other labs would be able to follow that model. So this is how we go to market. We've been working on a number of initiatives to really create a war chest of data proving the value of our system in 4 areas: prenatal and pediatric constitutional genome analysis, oncology with heme malignancies, and then oncology and solid tumors. Each of these studies will be 1,000 patients or more, and these will be the data sets that we will use to influence medical society guidelines. Those data sets are unfolding over the next 6, 12, and even up
Shake
as
of the
long
head,
as 24
a
months.
little bit of
And they'll be
cockiness.
very powerful in influencing reimbursement and medical society guidelines. We're also working on a next generation instrument. So if you look at the
I
historical
think the touch of the back of his ear was
throughput
kind of his
increases
own
that we've been
acknowledgement
able
that he
to
was being a little
achieve,
cocky.
about 14-fold increase since the launch of the Sapphire system. We're up to about 5,000 samples per year now, but we're forecasting a new system that will take that up by
Again, a
another
smirk by
factor of
Destiny.
14. First, through an intermediate step that'll be available to the market in the first quarter of 2023, and then a second innovation that will gang several of those systems together to produce finally 70,000 samples per year. And so what we will have in the market is our existing system at 5,000 samples per year or fewer, and then a high throughput system that serves really high volume central labs doing all sorts of testing. And so our roadmap and the catalyst that you're going to see coming out is going to be based around these clinical studies that are ongoing and all the data that they're throwing off, as well as ongoing product development. And that's kind of summarized in shorter term metrics here in this slide. So we're getting some accreditation of assays in Europe that allows them to get paid and reimbursed. We're releasing new assays and capabilities out to the market this quarter, both in to handle different sample types and new forms of data analysis. And then we start to see a number of milestones achieved, hopefully in the fourth quarter, around publications from some of our studies.
Destiny hands shaking her head.
Customers are making and developing their own assays. We expect to have a prototype of our next generation system available, and we expect to grow our install base to
kind of like, wow, I can't even
systems
say
by the end
anything.
of this year. And so far, we see that these milestones are on track. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole slide, and you can go back and take a look at our first quarter earnings release, which is now behind us. But we had a very solid first quarter, and overall, 2021 is off to a great start, and it's punctuated by a lot of data coming out, a lot of sites adopting the technology, and a lot of users publishing ongoing methods. And so what we see is great progress in the business and very good progress in terms of generating awareness and publications and data.
I don't know if I should sell, or if I should buy more, or if I should.
From a financial perspective overall, as I said, we did about 3.2 million in revenues in the first quarter, which was substantial year-over-year growth. And we spent about $12 million in operating expense in that quarter, but owing to some incredible financings that we did in January of 2021.
The expenses are going to be higher for the second quarter. They hired a lot of people.
$1 million in cash. And so you can see we have a really long cash runway that allows us to execute this plan. We do not expect to be back in the market raising financing. And I really want to thank my incredible team that has come together and made this.
He said he's not going to go back to the market to raise capital. There were some rumors put out by some people, maybe shorts, maybe institutions, that BNGO had some shelf shares. Shelf shares means that they had approval to issue those shares, but they kind of put them on the shelf until they're ready to raise that money. Now, he just said he's not going to go out and do a capital raise right now, which could be a hint that they've generated a good amount of capital in the second quarter. Who knows? But I think that's a really important point.
It's possible. We've added people as recently as Jason Pryor and Richard Shippey, Chief Commercial Officer and Chief Business Officer, respectively. And, we love the progress that we're making. So I want to thank everybody for following along here. And again, Jeff and Destiny, for the opportunity to share our story.
Thank you.
So my total evaluation of what's this going to do, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do right now. It's 9:05 a.m. in the morning. Today's July 14th. I got to make a decision. The stock dropped from 750 when I met with Auspicious Ascent, which, by the way, he's a very nice person, very nice young man, works very hard. And I do intend to meet with Mr. Investalot if I can get to the UK. Anyway, what I was saying is that, what should I do here? Should I go ahead and sell, or should I buy? Well, the market's not open yet, and I think the only thing I can do is tell you the truth so that you have kind of a head start. I have 1,020,000 and approximately 800 shares. I have to check, really. I bought 615 shares last night at $6.12. based on kind of his body language, which seemed like he was hiding something behind his hands. My analysis is that, was he hiding something that he doesn't want us to know because it's going to affect the price in a negative way? My final decision is that he's hiding something of great value to the industry. And my decision for today, July 14th, 2021, is to hold all my shares, and possibly if the price does not shoot up right away in the morning, I will probably buy another 10,000 shares. Thanks. Today's July 14th, 2021. My name is Mark Nejmeh. I'm from newsweed.com. Please subscribe to our channel and like the video. But more importantly, tell the truth. It's never as it seems. This is what life is today. It's just never as it seems. I do not give investment advice. I only give my opinion. I'm just a roofer with a newspaper and a dating app and a music app. But really, I'm just a roofer. I'm going to be going up on the roof in about 10, 15 minutes. Good luck, God bless, but don't take this as financial advice. I know nothing except things I've learned in life. See you later.